I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
Doo. What's going on, guys? Happy Tuesday. I missed you guys yesterday, but I hope all of you had a great 4th and a great weekend. And welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sab's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Fridays. And you can catch me here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Quick shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. And I want to give quick shout outs to people in the chat. What's going on? Lawrence Johnson says, doo, door 2024. Lawrence is also a Sabby member. What's going on? Welch's Grape says, doo. Shout out to Hannah G says, Sabby's back. Yes, I am. It was really weird not being here yesterday. It really was. But I enjoyed my time off. Shout out to Kenshi Jones says, Sabby boo. What's going on? Eric T. Red, who's a Sabby member, says, hi there, lefty friends. Greetings, Yipper99 says, doo, everybody. Sabby, what's next on the Sabby and JD show? I'm curious and hanging on the edge of my seat. I can't tell you that, Yipper99. That is a surprise. But yes, tune into that show on Thursday. Greetings, gamer. Giving a shout out there to Yipper. What's going on, Delthea? Giving a shout out there to Gamer. Delthea is also a Sabby member. Greetings, Serena, says Greg Corley is being imprisoned in Denton County Jail, Texas, and is being denied proper medical treatment. I've heard about that. Thank you so much for that, Serena. Shout out to Notori, says fire and love. Greetings, Sula Moon, says peace, love, and solidarity. All right, guys, I want to give a quick shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate all of your support. If you're interested, you can become a Sabby patron. I have 5 categories: members, Sabby, Sabsters, Sabinators, and Ultimate. All of their names are listed here, and they're also scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Thank you guys so much. It really does help me out a lot. Okay. Apparently, a lot happened over the weekend. And we're going to talk about those things tonight. Now, there were several stories that took place. I can't cover all of them, but I do think what we're going to cover here tonight is incredibly important. So here we go. Let me go ahead and share my thumbnail and let you know what we're going to be talking about tonight. Here we go. Okay. Tonight, we're discussing. See what happens? I take a day off. We're discussing Richard Wolff and Katie Halper next steps. That was a good conversation for Richard Wolff's economic update, talking about the political divide and where do we go from here. So I'm going to talk about that, give you my thoughts about it. I'm also going to discuss Joe Biden defense. Apparently, some people think we are being too hard on Joe Biden. Oh, I can't wait to get into that story. I'm also going to discuss Jayland Walker murder. So yes, if you have not heard, that story came out over the weekend. I'm going to get into that. There has been more information released. And last but not least, I'm going to discuss Kyrsten Sinema says no. And I often wonder, when does Kyrsten Sinema say yes? Now, tonight's stories have a theme. Tonight, we're going to talk about reform. Because I've mentioned this before on the show, but for those of you who are new, I don't believe that reforms actually are enough. I don't believe that reforms bring about real change. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later. But first, I want to get started with our first story. So let me go ahead and bring this up. I'm laughing because when you hear what this guy has to say, I think you might laugh too. So that's why that's happening. Okay, quick shout out to Case Study QB for this clip. So, as I mentioned to you at the beginning, there are some people who think that we're actually being a little too hard on Joe Biden. I kid you not. I'm not one of those people. Chances are, if you're watching this show, you're probably not one of those people either. But Case Study was able to clip that, and I do want to go ahead and share this clip. Now, this gentleman here who is speaking, he is a historian, and he has a little bit to say about the things that we've been complaining about with the Biden administration. So let's go ahead and get into that.
You know, I've just come back from Europe, and Europe is facing the inflation that we're facing. And what's so striking is that Europeans are not blaming their governments the way we blame our government for the inflation. There are a number of issues. I mean, the president, hasn't been perfect. The president promised a Build Back Better bill and clearly didn't have the votes, and I think hurt himself in the process. So it's not that this presidency has been perfect, but for him to be at 39%, he is in Watergate levels. I mean, he has fallen that far, and it doesn't make sense. There's no great scandal surrounding him. Yeah. We're helping an ally that's in a war. Usually Americans rally around the flag in such a circumstance. So the president, I think, is facing headwinds that are unusual. I would say a lot of it has to do with the pandemic and the fact that we still haven't recovered from COVID, in the sense that as a nation we still have an economy that it reflects COVID, and some people are still getting sick. So I think there are a lot of reasons. I think we've been really hard on this president, more than we have been on his modern predecessors, frankly.
Yes, you heard that right. Now, I'm going to break down some of the things that he said in this clip. First of all, I think this guy's being ridiculous. Now, he's a historian, so he's speaking from a historical perspective. He's not speaking from the perspective of the needs and the wants of the American people right now. So let's go ahead and break this down.
I've just come back from Europe, and Europe is facing the inflation that we're facing. And what's so striking is that Europeans are not blaming their governments the way.
Europeans are not blaming their governments for the inflation the way that Americans are blaming Joe Biden for inflation. To that, I would ask him, what do Europeans have in their countries that we don't have? Don't they have health care for everyone? Don't they have paid family leave? Don't some of the countries in Europe have free college? I'm sorry, but if we had all of those things, maybe we wouldn't be complaining as much right now either. The problem is we don't. So those of us dealing with inflation right now, with high gas prices, food shortage, the grocery prices are astronomical. Add on top of that medical bills, even if you do have insurance, some people can't pay their medical bills. And I know because they've reached out to me. So if we had health care for everyone in this country, that would be a cost we wouldn't have to worry about right now. But we don't have that. Sorry, it is what it is. We don't have guaranteed paid parental leave or paid family leave. We don't have guaranteed paid sick time for people in this country. So if you have a job that requires you to drive to work because there's no public transportation access for you, you are paying high gas prices. And if you get sick and have to call out for work and your employer does not offer paid sick time, you're screwed. If you get sick and let's say you're out for 5 days, that's a whole week that you're not getting paid. I know, because when I waited tables, we didn't have paid sick time at none of the restaurants that I worked at. So if you got sick, and this is another reason why a lot of times waitresses and waiters, this is why a lot of times they will come to work sick. Now, they tell you not to do that because you are serving food to people, but a lot of servers do it because they can't afford to miss that night, because that means they're not going to get paid. If we had paid sick leave for everybody, we wouldn't have to worry about that. But let him carry on. So he tries to make that comparison. That's a poor comparison.
We blame our government for the inflation. There are a number of issues. I mean, the president, hasn't been perfect. The president promised a Build Back Better bill and clearly didn't have the votes, and I think hurt himself in the process. So it's not that this presidency has been perfect, but for him to be at 39%, he is in Watergate levels. I mean,
39%, he is in Watergate level. Again, he's speaking from the perspective of a historian. How did Watergate directly hurt the American people? And I'm trying not to laugh here. I'm sorry. Yes, Watergate was a scandal. Yes, it was bad. But how did that directly affect the American people? Did that affect our jobs? Did that affect our housing situation? Did that affect our health care? Let me know. Because I'm sorry, but his comparisons are not good. And not once do the commentators push back on him about this. I would really like to get this guy on and really pick his brain and just say to him, why did you make these poor comparisons? Not good. Not good.
He has fallen that far, and it doesn't make sense. There's no great scandal surrounding him. Yeah. We're helping an ally that's in a war. Usually Americans rally around the flag in such a circumstance. So
there are no scandals surrounding him. So that's supposed to be the only reason you can criticize the United States president. He has to have a scandal. And I'd argue about the scandals because he had scandals surrounding him when he was running. Notice how he started to push the patriotism. Well, there's war going on, and usually Americans rally around the flag and get together for a war. Different times, bud. Different times. You mean the same way that people rallied around the flag for the Iraq war, which we found out was a lie? See, we also learn from history. We also remember, those of us who were around back then, we remember how they sold us the Iraq war, the message that they delivered to us. We all remember that. And then we found out it was all a lie. So why are you surprised, Mr. Historian, that a lot of Americans right now are not buying this? He's the historian, not me. How quickly he seems to forget.
The president, I think, is facing headwinds that are unusual. I would say a lot of it has to do with the pandemic and the fact that we still haven't recovered from COVID, in the sense that as a nation we still have an economy that it reflects COVID, and some people are still getting sick. So I think there are a lot of reasons.
And nothing to do with the inflation and the high prices right now, I'm sure, right?
I think we've been really hard on this president, more than we have been on his modern predecessors, frankly.
I'm sure it has nothing to do with the promises that Joe Biden made to the American people when he was running for president that he has not fulfilled. He mentioned Build Back Better. That was something that was made after he became president. He doesn't mention the things that Joe Biden promised the American people when he was running. Notice how he didn't say that part? Ava says, thank you, Sabby. Also, during the pandemic, Europe paid their citizens stipends while requiring them to stay home. Exactly. Biden couldn't even fulfill the $2,000. He had to shortchange that. JB Fonts in the house. We're done with this poor excuse of a country. Exactly. Well said. I mean, these excuses are ridiculous. Now, here's the thing. He says we're being too hard on Joe Biden. More people are starting to speak out, including celebrities. Now, this was really interesting to me. Deborah Messing, she was one of the celebrities that said that we should not vote for Bernie Sanders. She was heavily against. I remember this woman, Miss Will and Grace. She was heavily against a Bernie Sanders presidency because she did not believe that Bernie Sanders would be able to get anything done, because he wouldn't be able to work with Republicans across the aisle. So she was heavily pushing Joe Biden, and she blamed Bernie Sanders supporters. Yes, I still remember. Here's what Deborah Messing is saying today. Now, Adverse Depression JD posted this on Twitter. Check this out, you guys. So this is coming from CNN. Would zoom in, but it doesn't let me zoom in that well in pictures. I'll just read it to you. Deborah Messing was fed up. The former Will and Grace star was among dozens of celebrity Democratic supporters and activists who joined a call with the White House aides last Monday to discuss the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. Isn't it interesting how celebrities can just join these calls? Interesting, huh? What about the rest of us? The mood was fatalistic, according to 3 people on the call, which was also co-organized by the advocacy group Build Back Better Together. Messing said she'd gotten Joe Biden elected and wanted to know why she was being asked to do anything at all, yelling that there didn't even seem a point to voting. Others wondered why the call was happening. Well. But we tried to tell people like Deborah Messing that Joe Biden was not going to be a transformative presidency. We tried to tell Deborah Messing that Joe Biden was still technically a conservative when you look at the way that he legislates. We tried to explain this to people like her. But no, all of us that were the Bernie supporters, we were the problem. Everything was blamed and pointed on us. It was all our fault. So you got what you wanted, Deborah. You got a Joe Biden presidency, and now you're frustrated and you're like, I went out there and voted for him. Now I'm thinking about not voting at all. Now it's interesting that people like Deborah Messing can make that comment, but when everyday working class people like you and me, when we make that comment, we're seen as nihilist. We're pessimistic, bad faith actors. But it's okay when rich people say it. Take note of that. Take note. So I'm sorry, but this is exactly what she got. This is exactly what she wanted, a Joe Biden presidency. Now you sit around and you look like a fool. You really do. And it's not just Deborah Messing. Oh, no. Because now even some Democrat leaders are speaking out about Joe Biden. Listen to this. After a string of Supreme Court setbacks, Democrats wonder whether Biden White House is capable of urgency moment demands. Now, I want you to pay close attention to this word urgency, because that's something we talk about a lot over at RBN. There's a difference between the sense of urgency for people who actually need these demands right now and the people who support those demands, but they don't need them. Listen to this. God, this is too much. Hate to say I told you so, but here we go. Now it goes into the portion about Deborah Messing. I want to go down to the part about the Democratic leaders. Okay, here we go. Top Democrats complain the president isn't acting with, or perhaps is even capable of, the urgency the moment demands. They're even going to, as far to say he's not capable. Rudderless, aimless, and hopeless is how one member of Congress described the White House. Notice they don't mention their name. I wonder why is that? 24 leading Democratic politicians and operatives, as well as several with the West Wing, tell CNN they feel this goes deeper than questions of ideology and posture. Instead, they say it gets to questions of basic management. More than a week after the abortion decision, top Biden aides are still wrangling over releasing new actions in response, despite the draft decision leaking 6 weeks earlier. And I'm glad that they pointed that out, because it's not like Joe Biden can say he didn't know that this was coming. Because remember, the document was leaked weeks before. There should have been some type of plan put in place back then, but no, there wasn't. So there's that. They did nothing, and there seems to be no plan now. White House counsel Dana Remus had assured senior aides the Supreme Court wouldn't rule on abortion that day. A White House press aide assigned to the issue was walking to get coffee when the alert hit. Several, let's highlight this part here. Several Democratic leaders privately mocked how the president stood in the foyer of the White House, squinting through his remarks from a teleprompter as demonstrators poured into the streets, making only vague promises of action because he and aides hadn't decided on more. So there you go. They're letting you know they had no plan. None. That's why those speeches were just empty. Going down. Multiple Democrat politicians, this portion here, multiple Democrat politicians who have reached out to work with Biden, whether it's on specific bills, brainstorming, or outreach, often don't hear anything back at all. Potential appointees have languished for months waiting to hear if they'll get jobs or when they'll be done with vetting. Invitations to events are scarce. Thank you calls barely happen. Even some aides within the White House wonder why Biden didn't fire anyone from the West Wing or at the Food and Drug Administration to demonstrate some accountability or at least anger over the baby formula debacle. You know, it's really bad when CNN is calling this out. It's gotten to the point where you can't defend him anymore. You really can't. I want to hear, if you're defending Joe Biden right now, please let me know why. Come on. Even the media's turned against him. Inside the White House, aides are exhausted from feeling forever on red alert, battling at a swarm of crisis that keeps growing. Enough for White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre to make an offhand joke about the constant 11th hour decision-making in the building when under fire at a recent daily briefing. I want to talk to you for a second about this type of environment when you feel like you're always having to put out fires. That is not a healthy environment. I had a job as an advisor. Most of you know I was an academic advisor, but I've worked in different departments. And one of the departments that I worked in, that's what it was like. The leadership was poor. There was no plan. And basically the way you handled situations, you just had to handle them as they happened. There was no organization. Nobody knew what they were doing. And you were always on red alert. That is not a healthy environment. And what happened? There was a lot of turnover in that department. And I predict you're going to see that soon with the Biden administration as well. I predict there's going to be a lot of turnover because you're always like, you're like walking on eggshells. You're always like high strung because you don't know what's going to come your way. And if it's a constant thing and there's no plan, you feel helpless, but you know you have to try to diffuse the fire. And to have to do that all the time, that gets old very quickly. One more portion I want to read here. Oh, here we go. Several officials say Biden's tendency to berate advisors when he's displeased with how a situation is being handled or when events go off poorly has trickled down the ranks in the West Wing, leaving several mid-level aides feeling blamed for failings despite lacking any real ability to influence the building's decision-making. That's contributed to some of the recent staff departures. And that's probably why Jen Psaki left. So when there's no plan and when there's a lack of organization, this is what can typically happen. People are stressed out. They're constantly on red alert. You have high turnover rates. Nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody knows what's going on half the time. And then people start playing the blame game. You see, senior leadership will yell at mid-level leadership. Mid-level leadership will yell at the freshman leadership. They'll yell at the staff. The staff will yell at the people under them. And it just gets all the way down. Just a blame game. Everybody blames somebody else because no one wants to be at fault here, because no one can seem to handle what's going on. They can't get a handle on the situation. It's a problem. Jonathan said, oh, Corinne isn't doing a good job and she's getting called out on it, but they are already planning the black LGBTQ card on her. Right. That's right. It's terrible. Al Terrell said staff trouble trickling up. Yep. Delthea says, evidently we need to hit the lottery so we can complain impunity. Right. Sorry. JB said no sense of urgency unless it's their rights threatened. Now they cry. They didn't listen to us and now they're moaning about what we tried to tell them. A day late and $1 short. That's right. Thank you for the super chat, Janice. Messing will find sympathy in the dictionary between shh and syphilis. That's a good one, Janice. That is a good one. Oh boy. Oh dear. So for the gentleman, the historian that was on CNN, what are some of the things that Joe Biden could do without the support of the Senate? Let's go ahead and get into that. I see they didn't bring that up in this conversation either. Now, this was reported by Vox. 10 enormously consequential things Biden can do without the Senate. I'm just going to run through them here. Let's get started. Let's get ready to rumble. Boom. Fight climate change. That's one of the things. I do know the Supreme Court did overturn the EPA regulations that were in place, but that is one of the things that he could do. Joe Biden is still for fracking and doesn't have an issue with that. So he did rejoin the Paris Climate Accord, but he could go much further. Number 2, forgive student debt. Again, executive order. He could do that right now. Won't do it. Won't do it. Number 3, expand immigration. This is one of the ones. Now, this is actually Kamala Harris's position. She actually was tasked to deal with immigration reform. I haven't heard any progress with that. It's like, what are they doing? Like, literally, what are they doing all day? Haven't heard anything. Let's go back in. Ease the ban on marijuana. Again, he can do that by executive order. Won't do it. Won't do it because he wants the police to still be able to arrest people for marijuana. If you decriminalize marijuana federally, that is going to take a lot of police off the force because that is where a lot of the time and energy goes into. You decriminalize that. Now police don't have an excuse to stop people and say, oh, I thought I smelled marijuana. What are you going to stop them for now? That's a big one. And he wouldn't have an excuse to keep funding the police. This is what they spend a lot of their time on. This is why I tell people, if you are for decriminalizing marijuana or legalizing marijuana federally, then you should also be for defunding the police, because that's where they spend a lot of their time. Next, what else can Joe Biden do? Reverse Trump's rollback of air pollution and lead poisoning rules. Now, again, this was in reference to the Environmental Protection Agency. But like I told you, the Supreme Court just overturned that. So there's that. Next, cut back on factory farming. Again, these are just other things that Joe Biden could do without the support of the Senate. Create a postal banking system. Now, this is something that was mentioned by Andrew Yang when he ran for president for 2020. This was something that Andrew Yang said he would like to do. It's another thing he could do there. Crack down on Wall Street. Of course, we know Joe Biden's not going to do that. Why? Because he is a part of Wall Street. So he's not going to do that. Those are his donors. The whole Democratic Party is backed by people like Goldman Sachs and Citigroup. And so is the Republican Party as well. So he's not even going to touch that. Next. Shout out to Vox for putting out this article. Crack down on monopolies. Now, I don't know if this is necessarily considered a monopoly per se, but oh yeah, they have Google on here. One of the things they need to do is break up big tech. So that's another thing he could do, is crack down on monopolies. Now, here's one I want you to pay close attention to. Expand access to healthcare. Notice they use this word access. See, even Vox was careful not to say Medicare for all. Even Vox was careful not to say give everybody healthcare. Even they are using the term access. Interesting. And I believe that's all of them. Okay, so those are things that Joe Biden can do on his own without the approval of the Senate. So for the historian that was on that clip earlier, you want to know why he has the approval rating that he has? You want to know why people are so hard on him? Because he's not using his executive order ability in the way that he could. So that's that. Miziki 86, they were the donors, but now he's supporting Wall Street. It crashed a long time ago, but they're not going to say that. Good point. Rain Strom said, wasn't there a town in Montana or North Dakota that invoked emergency health crisis and gave everyone in the town Medicare for all? Yes, Libby, Montana. That's actually how Joe Biden could implement Medicare for all. He can actually use the example of the pandemic. And he could do that for all of us. But he's already told us if that bill came across his desk, he would veto it. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thanks for the tip on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. Someone should remind him that we are still waiting for that $2,000. Allowed CTC to expire on an election year when it should have been permanent or expire in 2023 at least. Millions evicted in August for not saving them, then kicking them off of unemployment 3 weeks later on Labor Day. No executive orders for Medicare for all, student debt relief, allow Medicare to negotiate for lower drugs. Sanctions on Putin, no $15 an hour, messed up. She did. And thank you for this tip as well. Messing is just protecting her tax bracket. That's why she was against Bernie. Believe it or not, Sab, I was a former information technology guy in my former life, so I know about dealing with putting out fires. Oh, yes, guys, definitely always thank IT. People are really mean to IT people, and I never understood that. I'm like, why are you guys mean to the IT crew? Like, where would you be without them? Shout out to the IT people. They are always putting out fires. It is true. All right, we're going into our next story, and this is about the filibuster. Now, I don't know if you are aware, but Joe Biden has come forward and is now saying that when it comes to the filibuster, no, he doesn't think it should be removed, but he does think there should be an exception made for abortion. Let's see how that's working out. Now, shout out to Case Study QB for this clip as well. They're talking about the filibuster issue here in reference to Joe Biden saying, okay, let's make an exception when it comes to abortion. But the other obstacle that seems to stand in the way, and of course, this involves Miss Kyrsten Sinema. Let's go ahead and get into that.
The issue is the base of the party, as you're talking about, is demanding for sort of wholesale change to this. They want to, quote unquote, go nuclear. Joe Biden, as we know, is a man of the Senate, an institutionalist. I don't think he's willing to go as far to say, just get rid of it entirely. And again, the math simply isn't there for it right now.
Yeah, and these other, I got
but
some other numbers.
But he gets to say it, right?
Go ahead. Audie, go ahead.
He gets to look at progressives and say that. I was going to say he gets to look at progressives and say, hey, I tried, but look at this senator and that senator. They're the holdup, not me. It's kind of the equivalent of what you heard today. The problem is Russia, Russia, Russia. The problem is someone else.
The issue is the base of the party, as you're talking about, is demanding for sort of wholesale change to this. They want to, quote unquote, go nuclear. Joe Biden, as we know, is a man of the Senate, an institutionalist. I don't think he's willing to go as far to say, just get.
He describes the people who want change as going nuclear. We're either radical or we're going nuclear. He goes on to say that Joe Biden is an institutionalist, as if this is a good thing. I don't see that as a positive comment.
Rid of it entirely. And again, the math simply isn't there for it right now.
Yeah, and these other, I got some other numbers.
But he gets to say it, right?
Go ahead. Audie, go ahead.
He gets to look at progressives and say that. I was going to say he gets to look at progressives and say, hey, I tried, but look at this senator and that senator. They're the holdup, not me.
Pay attention to something that she said. She said he gets to look at progressives and say that. Last time I checked, I thought the Democratic Party, the entire party, granted, I know there's individuals in it that are anti-abortion, but the entire party is supposed to be for women's rights. Notice how she's saying he gets to look at the progressives. So even she is letting you know that even when it comes to the abortion issue, even the establishment Democrats may not necessarily be willing to push on this issue, which is interesting considering it's an election year. Listen to how she says it. It's really strange. She also looks a little scared in this video here.
There for it right now.
Yeah, and these other, I got some other numbers.
But he gets to say it, right?
Go ahead. Audie, go ahead.
He gets to look at progressives and say that.
He gets to look at progressives and say that. They're talking about Roe v. Wade. Now, all of a sudden, is that radical too?
I was going to say he gets to look at progressives and say, hey, I tried, but look at this senator and that senator. They're the holdup, not me. It's kind of the equivalent of what you heard today. The problem is Russia, Russia, Russia. The problem is someone else.
The problem is someone else because there's always a rotating villain. That's why the problem is someone else. And it will always be someone else. When you look back with Barack Obama, the someone else was Lieberman. It's always someone. This is something that doesn't seem to change. It's just a way for them to say, well, we couldn't get it done because of this person. But is it just because of Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin? I'm actually going to go to that next and then come back to that article. Not necessarily. Case Study QB clip this as well. Man, Case is doing the damn thing. Thank you for this as well, Case. Is it just because of Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin? And I've mentioned this before. I didn't believe that. The Senate parliamentarian has also been a rotating villain. Blah, blah, blah. Sorry. Senate parliamentarian has also been a rotating villain. And I never believed it was just those two. And apparently I was right. Listen to this.
the president of the United States. He can ask, he can't tell, but he can ask Chuck Schumer to bring it to the floor. He can. The question then is, you have a put up or shut up moment, if you will, for other Democrats. We always talk about Manchin and Sinema. There are other Democrats who are reluctant to change the rules. Among them in the past has been this Democratic senator from New Hampshire, who's in a tough re-election campaign, who just launched this ad saying she's in the fight.
This decision catapults us backwards. And there are politicians like Mitch McConnell who've made it clear the objective is to ban abortion nationwide. We will not be intimidated. I will fight and never back down.
If Senator Hassan will fight and never back down, would that include, she has been reluctant in the past to change the filibuster rule.
Now that is Senator Hassan from New Hampshire, and apparently she has also been one of the ones that has been against this. It's always someone. Let him go on.
Chuck Schumer, bring it to the floor and say, let's find out.
And that's Chuck Schumer is likely to bring something to the floor. He brought the abortion bill passed in the House to the floor. It couldn't get the votes to pass through the filibuster. So he can continue doing these messaging votes. They can continue to talk a lot about these issues, but that I don't think will change the perception among many progressives. And that won't change, I think, the perception that could go down in the history books, quite frankly, that Democrats wasted this trifecta of power that they have and didn't actually do anything. When this landmark case came down on voting rights, they could just squander it and say, well, we talked a lot about it and we talked a good game.
And talking a lot about it risks demoralizing the Democratic base in an election in which they already say, why haven't you acted on climate? Why haven't you done the child care piece? Why haven't you done this? So before you jump in, I just want.
There was something I noticed with that young woman as well. Again, I want to remind you, they're talking about the filibuster making an exception for abortion. Listen to what she says.
Change the filibuster rule. Will Chuck Schumer bring it to the floor and say, let's find out?
And that's Chuck Schumer is likely to bring something to the floor. He brought the abortion bill passed in the House to the floor. It couldn't get the votes to pass through the filibuster.
Because obviously the filibuster is a problem. This will continue to be an issue. It's not just about Roe v. Wade. In general, this will continue to be an issue if they don't get rid of the filibuster.
So he can continue doing these messaging votes. They can continue to talk a lot about these issues, but that I don't think will change the perception among many progressives. And
that will not change the perception among many progressives. Again, they're talking about abortion. So is abortion now a progressive thing too? Does everyone see what's happening here? And by the way, every segment I have seen about this, I've watched multiple clips on cable media. They are painting it and they are framing it in this way, that this is something the progressives want. That's hilarious to me. Interesting how things change. Now, what is also interesting when it comes to Kyrsten Sinema, even though she has vocalized that she will not be for making the filibuster an exception for abortion, Kyrsten Sinema is not for that. I don't know why this woman is in the Democratic Party. She might as well go ahead and be a Republican. Remember, Kyrsten Sinema used to be a Green Party member. My, how times have changed. She's against it. She's someone that says she's for women's rights. Now she's against it, but apparently what she has not been against is raising money for women's rights issues while she's against it. Listen to this. Thank you, Salon, so much for this article here. Go ahead and move this over. Sinema kills plan to codify abortion rights, then fundraises on protecting women's health care. This is all Kyrsten Sinema is doing, you guys. I hope everyone noticed. All she's doing is fundraising. She's not there to make a difference. She's not there to really help anybody. All she wants to do is fundraise. Sinema won't back filibuster carve out to pass an abortion bill she is co-sponsoring. Again, she's co-sponsoring the bill. This woman is a joke. This woman is a joke. Let me go into this article here because they called her out on it. Senator Kyrsten Sinema on Thursday sent out a fundraising email touting her work to protect women's health care after shooting down President Joe Biden's proposal to codify abortion rights. Biden on Thursday called for the Senate to support a filibuster carve out to pass a federal law ensuring the right to an abortion. He went on to say, the most important thing we have to change, I believe we have to codify Roe v. Wade into law. Again, Democrats had many, many years to do that. I want to remind you, it could have been done under Obama, Clinton, even Carter. Obama said it wasn't going to be a high priority, even though he ran on it. He said that was one of the first things that he would do. Nancy Pelosi said in 2017, it wasn't a priority. And so here we are. Now, Joe Biden's like, we have to codify Roe v. Wade into law. I want to remind you, they also could have done that last year. If it was that important to them, they could have done that last year as well. That's why I don't believe it really mattered that much to them. Now, he went on to say, and the way to do that is to make sure Congress votes to do that. Again, putting it back on Congress. And if the filibuster gets in the way, it's like voting rights. It should be that we provide an exception to this, requiring an exception to the filibuster for this action to deal with the Supreme Court decision. Who shot it down? The plan was quickly shot down by Sinema and Senator Joe Manchin, who have opposed scrapping the filibuster. Sinema's office told CNN that the senator is still opposed to gutting the filibuster on any topic, including on reproductive rights. Sinema was accused of hypocrisy after repeatedly touting her support for abortion rights. Former Obama administration digital strategist Tim Fullerton flagged a fundraising email Sinema's campaign sent out Thursday touting her work to protect women's health care. And thank you, Tim, for doing this. The nerve of Kyrsten Sinema to include this in her fundraising appeal tonight is really just astounding. And here it is here. See if I'll pull it up. If I can clip on that. Whether we're ensuring the safety of our communities, working to protect women's health care, or bringing down rising costs, our team is working on the issues that matter most to everyday families. Now, this woman, I don't understand. If she gets reelected, I don't know how this is happening. Even people who canvass for Kyrsten Sinema, people in her district, people have heavily come out against her. So I don't understand. I don't understand. But obviously she's making somebody happy. Remember, she was at the Bilderberg meeting. She's pleasing people. It's just not her district. Delthea Simmons said the party platform is pro-choice. The party is pro-don't do shit. I hear you. I hear you. Got to scoot my chair over. Angela said it's like the number of Dems who are pro-life. They don't focus on them because it isn't suiting their narrative right now. But when Pelosi goes back to saying that the issue is hurting the party, ... Delthea says the Dem party leadership doesn't care about Roe except for using it to raise money. Exactly. Bingo. Hello, Steve. Greetings. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tips on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. Postal banking, yes. I know I talk about public banking, but a public bank is a government bank that would finance infrastructure while creating a surplus without having to raise taxes. It wouldn't be used as a retail bank, but a postal bank actually could do that. We had a PO system from 1911 to 1967 where this was a success. Don't know why LBJ decombed it. Thank you for this tip, Dave. Hey, Sabby, sent you an email on Mildred Haley, Bromley Heath. Good luck. Nice to see this tonight. Yes, I saw that. Thank you for that. I'm actually still trying to put something together for that, but I'll get back to you. Thanks for this tip as well, Roger. I absolutely see it as a compliment that he says, I want to go nuclear and I'm radical. Embrace it, Sabby. Don't be afraid to be who you is. You should always give the appearance that you're a little crazy. You don't. Roger, this is funny. You don't have to be the Joker. Just convince them into believing you are. That you are willing to hold them hostage in a burning house. They say we'll both burn. So give me what I want and we can both go. Thanks so much for those as well. Oh boy. All right. I want to go ahead and get into our next story, but really quick, guys, do a quick like check. Hit that like button if you haven't done so. If you're new and you're not signed up for my newsletter, that's pinned to the top of the live chat. Sign up for that. Takes 2 seconds. You just enter your email. You'll always receive a notification when I go live. It usually goes out 5 minutes before I go live. Can't rely on YouTube for that. You cannot. Okay, we're going into my third story. And this is about Jayland Walker. I don't know if you heard about this story. Maybe you have. More information has been released. I want to talk about that tonight. Now, there have been a number of shootings that happened over the weekend, and it's sad to say that I had to stop and think, which shooting am I going to discuss? That's where we are in this country. I decided tonight I want to focus on Jayland Walker because I feel like this story needs more attention. Now, shout out to Lee Camp. He tweeted this: police in Ohio shot an unarmed man who was fleeing 60 times. U.S. police kill over 1,000 people a year. Whoopsies. Many countries in Europe, for example, average under 20 deaths a year. Some average 0. The U.S. is uniquely brutal. Thank you so much, Lee, for saying that. Lee is talking about Jayland Walker. Jayland Walker, he worked for DoorDash over the weekend. He was involved in a police chase. Now, I'm going to play a clip here in just a second and go through some more details in an article. I've already seen the clip. They did release the body cam footage. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say this. Once he was running away, he was no longer a threat. When he was running away from the police, he was unarmed. They shot him 60 times and then handcuffed him afterwards. Let's go ahead and get into the clip. Let me share this here. Very sad, very disturbing.
We begin with Maggie Vespa and a warning. There are disturbing images.
Nearly 1 week after Jayland Walker's death and facing growing community pressure, officials in Akron, Ohio, releasing the body camera footage.
I won't mince words. The video you're about to watch is heartbreaking.
It shows a harrowing police chase followed by a stunning hail of bullets. An estimated 90 rounds fired by 8 Akron, Ohio officers, killing and leaving 25-year-old Jayland Walker with 60 wounds to the body, according to authorities.
60 wounds. Again, when he was running, now they said they found a handgun in his car, but so what? So what? When he was running, once they are fleeing, they are no longer a threat. When you shoot someone, he was hit 60 times. They fired 90 rounds. He was hit 60 times. They were shooting to kill. Let's go back in.
My youngest is 25 years of age as well. And I cannot imagine what life would be like without my son.
The approximately 7.
I'm sorry, I have to jump in here and I have to say to that gentleman, your son, if it was your son, he wouldn't have been in this situation to begin with, because the police, you are a white gentleman, the police would not have fired 90 rounds at your son. We have to call it out. He wouldn't be in that situation. That's the difference.
Minutes of raw video released alongside a second narrated clip gives new insight into what preceded the shooting early Monday morning. Police say they tried to pull Walker over for an unspecified traffic violation and an equipment violation, which is not shown on tape. But they say,
okay, that's the reason why they were pulling him over, for a traffic violation. And this goes back to the point that I've made multiple times. I do not believe that police officers should make traffic stops. I don't. I think somebody else should handle traffic stops. All of this over a traffic violation. Do you see how this went incredibly wrong? How this went from 0 to 100?
he took off, driving at high speeds, and Walker fired at them. Police saying you can see the flash from the gun from this security camera.
21 shots fired. That vehicle just had a shot come out of its door.
A shot is fired. That changes the nature of the contact.
Authorities say Walker later ran from his car wearing a ski mask. Officers, investigators say, fired tasers but missed. What followed? That deadly barrage of bullets. Police tonight saying officers said.
So at this point, and by the way, let's remember there's two sides to the story. Unfortunately, you'll never get to hear Jayland's side because he's dead. At this point, even in the car chase, even if he fired shots, again, don't know. They showed a little image there. They said, see, that's gunfire. I don't know. This is the story coming from the police department. Let's remember, they're trained to lie. They're trained to, just switch stories a little bit so that they're in the right, or they make the public believe they're in the right. When he got out of that car, he was running away from them. He wasn't running towards them. He's running away. They shot at him 90 times.
They thought Walker was turning toward them, reaching for a gun. Walker was unarmed when he was shot, though police say they found a gun and what appears to be a wedding ring in Walker's car.
Shoot somebody 60 and 70 times like there's nothing inhuman.
Anger in Akron boiling over.
We have sons ourselves. It could be any of our sons. And this is just horrible, like that many times.
We are done like this, in this manner, with this fate. Nobody should ever suffer the fate that Jayland Walker did.
Tonight, the family revealing just a month ago, Walker lost his fiancée.
Well, we know that immediately after the death of his fiancée, he was sad, but he wasn't exhibiting any kind of behavior that scared the family.
The family's attorneys say the 25-year-old food delivery driver had no criminal record. His mother and sister pleading for peace, overwhelmed with loss.
Why did this happen in such a manner? Such a terrible, terrible way. Just why?
And Maggie joins me now. Maggie, what do we know?
I just want to jump in here and say for a second, thank you for that credit, It's Born. Cops in the U.S. kill on average 3 people a day. I want to jump in and just add that, again, What just happened in Illinois? There was a mass shooting in Illinois, correct? Did the police shoot 90 rounds at that suspect? Did they? No. Running away. He was running away from them.
About the 8 officers involved in the shooting, have they been placed on leave?
Kate, they have. Those 8 officers who remain unnamed at this point were placed on paid administrative leave, which we're told is standard procedure, according to Akron PD. At the same time, officials say those officers have yet to be interviewed about the shooting, but the police union here is saying they absolutely plan to cooperate. Also tonight, an outside state agency is handling the independent investigation into this shooting. And as you saw, a community is demanding answers. Kate.
Now, there's been several protests, but there's something I want to show you again in this video. I want to show him running away because this is the part. Not there. Here.
Video you're about to watch is heartbreaking.
It shows a harrowing police chase followed by a stunning.
Okay. Here are the police officers chasing him. He is running away from them. But they felt the need to fire 90 rounds at him. Now, there's a little bit more detail about this. Like I said, more information has come out recently. I want to go ahead and get into that. What we know about the fatal police shooting of Jayland Walker. Okay. Walker was unarmed at the time he was killed. I'm going to say this one more time. I don't care that he had a handgun in his car. It seems like it doesn't really matter if they have a handgun and they have a permit to have the handgun. If you're black, it don't really matter. When they chased after him, he was unarmed. That's what you need to remember. Because I've already been hearing people make excuses about this. No, bro, no. Now, Akron Police Chief Stephen Milet told reporters a gun was found in Walker's vehicle after the shooting. Police said an officer said Walker fired a gun from his vehicle during the car chase. Again, this is what the police are saying. Let's all remember, and I think JB just pointed this out. Remember how Uvalde police lied. Remember that? Protest Sunday started peacefully, but that changed after night fell. There was a significant property damage done to downtown Akron. Isn't this interesting? Significant property damage done to downtown Akron. And see, these are the things that police really care the most about is protecting property, protecting capital, protecting wealth. They care more about the property that was damaged in Akron than they care about the man who they just killed. They care more about the property. I'm going to show you something too about the Akron police. Let's go back in. Police said they arrested around 50 people after dozens of protesters failed to disperse from the downtown area. While the majority were peaceful, a group of violent protesters caused substantial property damage to nearby businesses, restaurants, and residential structures, shattering windows and lighting small fires, according to the news release from the Akron Police Department. Police initially provided verbal instructions to the protesters. What police say happened? Now, this is the part that's important. Again, this is what they are saying. Walker was killed in a burst of gunfire early last Monday following a vehicle pursuit and foot chase that started when officers tried to stop him for traffic and equipment violations. Again, shouldn't have been them doing these traffic stops. Walker fled the stop, according to a narrated video Timeline Police played at Sunday's news conference, and officers gave chase. About 40 seconds after the start of the pursuit, the narrated video says a sound consistent with a gunshot can be heard in the body camera footage. The officers told dispatch that a gunshot had been fired from Walker's vehicle. Police also showed still images taken from traffic cameras that showed a flash of light, perhaps a muzzle flash, along the driver's side of the car. They don't actually have proof that that was a gunshot. I'm not saying this is incorrect, but based on what I'm reading, they don't actually have proof that it was a gunshot. That changes the whole nature of the incident, Millett said, turning a routine traffic stop into a public safety issue. After several minutes, Walker's vehicle slowed and he exited the vehicle and ran. Several police officers got out of the patrol cars and chased him, and officers deployed tasers in an effort to stop him. Police said, but were unsuccessful. Oh, okay. So you then kill him? So if the tasers don't work, you just kill people? You know what's really sad about this situation is that someone like Joe Biden is going to look at this and he's going to say, see, we got to give them more money. We need to give the police more money so that they can learn how to do their job. I disagree. Giving the police more money isn't going to help these situations. We've given the police more money. We have police reform. We have these body cams. Some of the police officers turn the body cams off and they lie about the story anyway. So giving the police more money isn't going to change the situation. For the people who come back and say, well, the police need more training so we can give them more money so they can be trained better. No, that's not what it's about. Because the reality is, regardless how well they are trained, they are not doing their job the way that they are supposed to. Training or no training. Training does not stop you from seeing a Black person as a threat. All the training that they've had is not stopping them from shooting unarmed Black people. Anybody notice that? That's up here. Now, I want to show you something about the Akron police. Let's go ahead and get into that. Oh, did I get to this part? This was shared with me because I was not aware of this at the time. Thank you so much, Misty from Facts on the Ground. Misty actually shared this, and thank you so much, Misty, for letting us know about this. There's something I think people need to know about some of the police officers in Akron. Make sure this is here it is. Now, this is from Old Woman Seeking Justice. It is also not lost on me that in the videos released by Akron PD, many of the cops armed are blurred. Many of the cops' arms are blurred, so we can't see their tattoos. Now, Comrade Ohio has been sounding the alarm about this for years, about some of the police in Akron. Let me click on some of these pictures and show you what they're referring to. You see that tattoo? It says PMC Wagner Group. I'm gonna go to the next picture. This one's sideways, but they have the tattoo here as well. Also here, These are officers. And then I'm going to get to the one where it explains to you what it is. Okay. This tattoo in the photo, which was posted about 3 hours after their Tuesday statement, the cop on the left has a Totenkopf skull tattoo. I hope that's how you pronounce it. Totenkopf skull tattoo on his wrist. The death's head symbol is extremely popular among fascists and was popularized by the Nazi Schutzstaffel SS during World War II. Now, this is something that apparently Comrade Ohio has been trying to bring to people's attention for years. It goes on to say they're riddled with fascists and racists, flexing their fascist credentials and perhaps relishing in the murder of Walker. The official Facebook account of Akron Police Department posted a photo the same day they put out their statement on the killing of Walker, which shows a cop with a fascist tattoo on his wrist. It's this image. There, and there. So, this is a problem. I wish more people could share this information. And I've told people about this before. If you think that people who are Klansmen and neo-Nazis are not in these positions, you are incredibly wrong. They can be cops, they can be doctors, they can be lawyers, they can be in any position that they want to. They don't always stand out. That needs to be mentioned. Dan said that area has been a hot spot for many years for KKK types. I did not know about this until earlier today when I said I was going to discuss the story. I did not know about that. So she put a number up here and said that Akron's police department should not have a moment of peace, regardless of how fruitless you think it is. Keep calling. Demand release of the original traffic stop, which, by the way, we haven't seen that yet. Ask where the gun was found. Why did cops move it to the front seat? What tattoos are you hiding? Demand arrest. Here's the number here. 330-375-2244. That's the chief of Akron Police and the mayor's office. I would like to hear from the mayor. I think she or he needs to get involved here. 330-375-2345. Let me go back. Again, this is from Old Woman Seeking Justice. Full BWC in the murder of Jayland Walker. Unlike mass shooters, he was given no opportunity to surrender, no negotiations. Almost all of the shots were fired after he was on the ground. They staged the gun, ring, clip, and casing. No video of the traffic stop. So even though that clip that I showed you of them chasing him, there still isn't a video of the actual traffic stop. That's concerning. As I mentioned to you when I read that article, it didn't sound like to me they actually were able to prove that it was a gunshot that came from his car. Also, to her point, when she says they staged the gun, ring, clip, and casing, it wouldn't be the first time that police have done that. How do we know that that gun belonged to Jayland Walker? How do we know? We don't know that. How do we know they didn't put that gun there? They've done this before. We will never know the full story because Jayland Walker is dead. That's why they kill them. They don't want the story to get out. Thank you for the super chat, AJF. Shooting someone running away without a gun multiple times has a term for that. Bestial. That's right. Comrade Cam, was someone's car hit by this gunfire or something? Because I didn't see a flash in the picture. And remember, this is their version of the story. Thank you for the super chat, AJF. Everyone, please notice this pattern. When the media relays what cops or the state says, the media rarely ever insert words like purportedly, supposedly, allegedly, etc. But only do so for victims' claims of state violence. That's a good point. And thank you for this super chat as well. Civilians are named, but cops are not until forced. That's right. They do that. Justin said society should and rightfully hate cop killers, but killer cops are acceptable. That's a sickness that simply voting isn't equipped to fix. I'm glad you brought that up. Red and blue is complicit in this murder. Thank you so much for saying that, Justin, because that brings me to my next point. Someone posted a tweet, and I agree 100% with this statement. The redacted run everything. Black people, the only group of people that watch someone from their community get shot 60 times and then say, this is why we have to vote. Where's the lie? When I talk about police brutality, this is something that voting is not going to fix. It's not. And that's going to bring me into my next story. But I wanted to mention that because, again, I told you tonight's stories have a theme. Reform. How is reform working out? When you think about the police departments, the criminal justice system, is reform working? I don't see it working. How is reforming the Democratic Party working out? Because that brings me into my next story, because I don't see that shit working either. Now I'm going to go into this story here with Katie Halper and Richard Wolff. So Richard Wolff recently interviewed Katie Halper on his Economic Update podcast. And there's some things said here about the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Also, political divide and where do we go from here? Again, I want you to listen to this with the word reform in mind. And then I'm going to break down some parts here and there. Because the point that I want to make tonight with all of these stories that I've shown you, the point that I want to make is that reform does not work. It just doesn't. The reason why reform does not work is because when you reform something, you may get a little win here and there, but you never override the system. You're still playing in the same system that you said was so corrupt. You can apply that to police system, the policing system in this country, and you can also apply that to putting progressive through the Democratic Party. You can apply that to Joe Biden. You can apply it to Wall Street. You can apply it to the education system. Reforms do not work. Let's get into this story. I have a lot to say.
Jason.
What about the idea that the culture wars, so-called, fighting around religion or abortion or guns and all of that, is some sort of substitute, some sort of dry run, maybe, for a more basic civil war around economic and more philosophic issue? Is there anything to this notion of culture war as either preliminary or form, if you like, of a more basic civil war?
Well, I think the primary function of the culture wars is to serve as a distraction from kind of socioeconomic shared interests. And I think it lets the Republicans screw people over while pretending that they're fighting for their best interest. They can kind of distract people with these culture war issues. And I want to be clear, I don't think something like abortion is unimportant. I just think that it's something that Republicans run on, Democrats run on in different ways, obviously. I mean, Republicans run on it trying to, and sometimes successfully, limiting women's right to bodily autonomy and right to choose, reproductive freedom. And they are very successful at eroding this right. And obviously we see this more, and it's even scarier than ever with the Supreme Court. Then you have Democrats who run on it, but they haven't really done anything to codify Roe v. Wade, but they get to fundraise off of it. I think that that's really the function of the culture wars. It serves as a distraction, and that way both Republicans and Democrats, I don't want to totally equate them, but certainly they're both beholden to donors, and they both have they share overlapping donors.
Okay. They're talking about the culture war as a distraction. It's true. They do get people to focus on these cultural issues so that you're not paying attention to the economic issues which affect the majority of us. Here's the thing. Now, Katie just told you that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, a lot of times, they have their donors, they have shared donors, right? This is part of the reason why trying to reform the Democratic Party does not work. You have the donors, you have shared donors. So if the Democrats and Republicans have shared donors, they have shared interests. That's why the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are against the progressives. Neither of them want the progressives there. Don't get it twisted. The Democratic Party doesn't want them there, and the Republicans don't want them there. And the progressives in Congress know that. Why? What did the progressives do differently in reference to the corporate Democrats and, of course, the Republican Party there as well? The progressives ran grassroots campaigns. Now, we can go into logistics later on about billionaire money going into Justice Democrats and Sunrise Movement and all of that. I've talked about that multiple times on this show. But when it comes to the individual donations, the way that they actually fundraise, they ran grassroots campaigns. That's a threat. The Republicans in Congress and the Democrats, the corporate Democrats in Congress, see that as a threat because you just showed the American people that you can get elected without taking corporate money. They don't like that. And their donors don't like that either. Let's go back in.
And so what they're able to do is show these shiny objects, what would be the equivalent of a shiny object, which are these culture war issues. They get to hide behind those and continue to screw people over economically.
Well, I noticed, which I appreciate in your work, an interest in history and using history to make comparisons, to draw lessons. So let me ask you to follow up on what you just said. What happened, in your view, to the Democratic Party?
Yeah, that's something I think a lot about, and I think it's really up for debate. And in terms of the history of the Democratic Party selling people out, I'm a big fan of Thomas Frank in general, but especially of his work, Listen Liberal, Whatever Happened to the Party of the People. And I think that, the Democrats were always more hawkish than people like to admit. They also were less, Roosevelt was unique, I think, in his, and you'd know about this much more than I would as an economist. But Roosevelt was unique in how he championed the rights of working people.
And let's go ahead and break something up here. What happened to the Democratic Party? Money. You see, Ralph Nader talked about this as well. Ralph Nader was able to fight back against General Motors. In an interview, I played it on the show before, Ralph Nader said, yeah, we were able to do those things because we didn't have political action committees back then. They didn't have PACs. Money happened to the Democratic Party. That's why it changed. Ralph Nader went on to say in that interview that he could never do what he did back then, fighting against General Motors, with the Congress that we have in place right now because it's all bought and paid for. Money is what happened to the Democratic Party. I just want to go ahead and add that part in there. And then there was a piece she said here.
The Republicans screw people over while pretending that they're fighting for their best interest. They can kind of distract people with these culture.
Not that piece. This part right about here.
To the Democratic Party.
Yeah, that's something I think a lot about, and I think it's really up for debate. And in terms of the history of the Democratic Party selling people.
See, that's the part I don't think is up for debate. When Katie goes to say it's up for debate, no, I just told you what happened. Money. I don't see how that's debatable. I really don't. Political action committees, super PACs, that's what happened. She went on to mention FDR, and listen to this.
People out. I'm a big fan of Thomas Frank in general, but especially of his work, Listen Liberal, Whatever Happened to the Party of the People. And I think that, the Democrats were always more hawkish than people like to admit. They also were less, Roosevelt was unique, I think, in his, and you'd know about this much more than I would as an economist. But Roosevelt was unique in how he championed the rights of working people. And his social democratic approach to politics, which we haven't really seen. I mean, we saw some of that with JFK and LBJ, but
a lot of progressives like to mention FDR and how he championed workers' rights, but they also leave out the fact that FDR also screwed over Black people and Native Americans with his New Deal policies as well. They don't mention that. If you want to hear that, you got to listen to me, or you got to listen to RBN. You got to listen to Black Power Media. You have to listen to Black commentators, because the white leftist commentators are not telling you that. That's a piece, I think, that people need to hear. And I don't know if it's just because they don't know. Maybe they do know. But that part needs to be said. And I know that because I've done a lot of research on that myself. So when we say he championed workers, he championed which workers? White workers. Didn't champion Native Americans, didn't champion Black Americans. Now, that doesn't mean that we didn't benefit somewhat from the New Deal, but we didn't get the same damn benefit that white people did. Let's be real. All right, let's go back in.
I think that with Bill Clinton especially, we saw a kind of recasting, a more overt almost embrace of moderate politics, centrist politics that, and then of course there's the Cold War, right, which made Democrats run away from the left and afraid of their own shadows. And that's a whole other issue. But I think that one thing, going back to Thomas Frank, that is interesting is this idea that Democrats, it's not that they're cowardly and inept. They actually don't want a lot of the things that they claim that they want, the things that they claim to champion. So I grew up always thinking they were just kind of spineless, but it's not spinelessness. It's actually, I think, political theater. I think that so I think we have Clintonianism, and then we also have a very dangerous weaponization of identity politics, where identity politics are kind of hijacked and used to distract from economic exploitation. It's the opposite of what it was invented to be when it was created, that term, by the Combahee River Collective. The women who did that were radical. The people who now have taken that term or that movement have totally hijacked it. And so what we see is, for instance, Hillary Clinton, who famously said, "Is breaking up the banks and racism, no." And that was a straw man issue, because no one was saying that breaking up the banks would end racism. She was clearly trying to undermine Bernie Sanders' focus on economic justice. And
now I will add something here. When it comes to identity politics, the Democrats play this better than no one else. They play it better than no one else. They played it heavily with Barack Obama, heavily with Hillary Clinton. You could have the first Black president when Hillary was running for 2016. You can have the first female president. They do that a lot. and they usually do well with it. But not in 2016. Americans didn't fall for it that time. That was the wrong identity to that was the wrong person to use identity with, because people really do not like Hillary Clinton. I'm sorry. I'm laughing because it's still funny to me, because I think a lot of liberals just seem to be shocked that so many people dislike Hillary Clinton. Yeah, she won the popular vote, but she still lost to a reality TV star. And let's also be real. Look at the way that people came out for Hillary Clinton versus Barack Obama versus Joe Biden. The turnout really wasn't there. Even though a lot of African Americans, when polled, said we would support Hillary Clinton, when it came time to vote, the numbers weren't there. So I'm sorry, but it's just funny to me that they can't understand why people dislike Hillary Clinton. But let's go back into the video. I'm sorry. It's just funny to me.
Irony is, of course, that, as you know better than me, better than I do, the housing crisis and the banking crisis were very racialized, and the people who suffered the most were people of color. So that is a great example of the cynical weaponization of identity politics to not only undermine economic justice, but to also undermine economic justice that has very racialized components to it. And that would have helped. Of course, it wouldn't break up the banks, wouldn't end racism, but it just shows how little these people like Hillary Clinton actually care. They don't even, it's not only that they reject economic justice and don't see the connection between economic justice and racial justice or gender.
So she mentions the housing issue and the groups that were targeted. And she said people of color. Yes, Latinos were a part of that as well, but it was elder African Americans that were targeted. They were going after Black elders' homes. And I'm sorry. Yes, sometimes we do have to say people of color. But in that particular situation, it was Black elders that were targeted because they knew, okay, let me go target this older Black person who's probably, they may not read all the paperwork. They may not understand it all. You know, they worked their whole lives, paid the house off. And there's I'm going to do a whole separate show about what happened with that, with one woman in particular. It goes off of the documentary, The Con. But they heavily targeted Black elders. So a lot of Black elders lost their homes. Black wealth tanked under Barack Obama. But the media kind of glossed over it. Barack Obama made excuses for why he could not bail out the American people, why he had to bail out the banks. None of them were prosecuted. None of them were arrested for it. And people still lost their homes. But again, there's another thing I notice. It seems to happen within this space. People want to be like people of color, In this particular situation, they targeted Black elders. And another thing I want to add too about the whole people of color thing, some of the things that I've noticed from my experience, it's really funny to me. Some groups don't want to be considered people of color until someone reminds them that they're not white. Black people never have that option. We always know that we are on the other side. But it isn't until sometimes other groups have to end up going through some type of oppression with us, all of a sudden we're people of color. Sorry, but I had to say that. I had to say it. It cracks me up when people do that.
Issues, but they actually embrace policies which disproportionately hurt people of color while running as these champions of racial justice, while running as a feminist. Same thing with not supporting Fight for 15, the minimum wage, raising the minimum wage to $15, which Bernie Sanders, of course, supported. Hillary Clinton didn't. And that is, as people may know, the majority of minimum wage earners are women and people of color. And so, again, it's just this example of progressive in name, but not in policy. And so we see that is, I think, one of the most dangerous things about today's Democratic Party is how they use these very important issues, but not only do they sell people out economically, but they're also contributing to this vast racial inequality.
And They co-opted the term progressive. Everybody's a progressive now. Have you noticed? Chantel Brown's a progressive. Ted Lieu's a progressive. Everybody has co-opted that. They took the term. They took it. It's a damn shame how they just able to take that term like that, and people aren't even questioning it. Let's go on.
So then what is going to represent the people on the left who might once have seen the Democratic Party as in some way an expression of their needs, wants, desires, and interests?
Right.
Are we forever condemned to have two conservative parties just with different names?
Yeah, I
notice how Richard Wolff said two conservative parties, because that's really what you have. That's really what you have, guys. Now, I could say this to some of my friends that are liberal. They like Hillary, they like Biden. I could say this to them and they're like, what are you talking about? We're for abortion. We're for gay rights. We're for da-da-da. I was like, yeah, some of y'all were also for calling the police on black people that came to your neighborhood too. Mention that part. Some of you were also for not having black people go to school with you too. You say you were for equal rights and you wanted people to have equal educational opportunities, but you didn't want them in your neighborhood though. Mention that part. That's the thing about liberals. That's the thing I keep telling people. They're just as racist too. They pretend like they're not. They say they care. And I'm writing an article on this actually right now. This will be out later this week. I'm writing an article talking about how liberals perpetuate racism. It's all going to be in there. I'm almost done with it. I got a couple more paragraphs, but that'll be in part of my Substack. But I'm just letting you know, come on. The liberals, they kill me, man. They kill me. But he's right. Two conservative parties.
I don't know the answer to that. I obviously was someone you can probably tell was a huge Bernie Sanders supporter, and he was, he was marginalized and denigrated. And I think that I go back and forth, honestly, on what I think about the Democratic Party. I mean, we live in a duopoly, obviously. So, and we live in a duopoly where there aren't that many progressives. And even with the squad, we saw they all voted for the $40 billion for proxy war in Ukraine.
We live in a duopoly. And also, we have the progressives and with the squad, how they've been voting. They're not separate. The squad is a part of that duopoly. The squad members are Democrats. I don't know why we feel the need to not call them that, but that's what they are. They are Democrats. They've been voting the way that corporate Democrats want them to vote. They have not been fighting for these progressive issues that they ran on. They wouldn't even force a vote. They have to go ask Nancy Pelosi permission to do certain things that they want to do. They are Democrats. I think we should stop talking about them as if they are this separate entity. They are a part of the Democratic Party. They are just as corrupt. They're with them now. And they've been behaving in such a way as well. So we may live in a duopoly, but the squad lives in that duopoly too. They're actually a part of it. And just because we live in a duopoly doesn't mean this is where we need to stay. Let's go on.
Flooding Ukraine with weapons, basically. I think, though, that we can't totally write off electoralism because, that is the system that exists. If people want to try to grow third parties, that's certainly admirable.
And this is why reform does not work. I want you to listen to what Katie just said. This is the telling piece. This piece right here. Hold on, let me go back. Hear it one more time.
Are we forever condemned to have two conservative parties just with different names?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I obviously was someone you can probably tell was a huge Bernie Sanders supporter, and he was, he was marginalized and denigrated. And I think that I go back and forth, honestly, on what I think about the Democratic Party. I mean, we live in a duopoly, obviously. So, and we live in a duopoly where there aren't that many progressives. And even with the squad, we saw they all voted for the $40 billion for proxy war in Ukraine, flooding Ukraine with weapons, basically. I think, though, that we can't totally write off electoralism because, you know, that is the system that exists. If people want to try to grow.
That is the system that exists. Let's talk about systems that exist. The policing system that we have right now in this country. I told you I was making a connection with these stories tonight. The policing system that we have in this country right now, the system of policing in this country is not working. Not for the American people. It's not working for Black people. It doesn't work for poor people. It doesn't work for working class people. It's not working for Native Americans. It's not working for Latinos. The policing system works for a certain select group in this country. That's the system that we have right now that exists. Some people want to reform the policing system. I've been down that road. Reforming policing does not work. I'm done with reforms. I'm saying we need to override that system. We need to tear that system down and we need to build something new. That is part of the road to abolition. That's what I'm saying. When you talk about electoral politics, Katie is telling you this is the system that we have. Now she's going to go on to say, well, if you want to try third parties, listen to this.
Third parties, that's certainly admirable. Third, fourth, fifth parties. But I do also think, especially on a local level, you have DSA.
If you want to grow third parties, fourth, fifth parties, that's admirable. But Katie is letting you know that she is going to operate in the system that is in place. That's reform. Let's operate in the system that we have in place, and let's try to make some tweaks here and there. But let's not override the system. Let's not break the system. Let's not really shake the fuck out of the system. That's the difference between reformists and people who want some type of revolution, who want complete change. There's a difference from people who have a sense of urgency and people who do not. For those of you who are poor, who are working class, who have that sense of urgency, who know what it's like to not have health insurance, who know what it's like to make $7.25 an hour, who know what it's like to you working at a hospital, but you can't even afford to go to the damn hospital. I was one of those people. You know what it's like to wait tables at a restaurant that you can't afford to eat in yourself. For those people, this reform strategy, it is not happening fast enough. It is not bringing any real tangibles to their life. It is not giving them any type of change. And by the time there will be some type of change that comes through, it's not going to fucking matter because you'll probably already be dead. This is the difference between the people who are comfortable enough to tell you all you have to do is just keep putting progressives in through the Democratic Party and eventually we'll get there. Now, they'll tell you, like Katie just said, if you want to start a third party or a fourth party, that's great too. If you want to do direct action, that's great too. We can do all of these things, but they're not doing all of them. They're not. You know who is doing all of them? People like me, people like RBN, people like Hardlands Media. Honestly, the smaller channels. That's who's doing all of them. Let's be real. If you look at those of us from RBN, where did we come from? We were activists. We were heavily Bernie supporters. Some of us canvassed for Bernie Sanders, donated to Bernie Sanders and AOC and the rest of the members of the squad. We came from activism and we came from trying to do that reform strategy. We already been there. That's why we telling you, you got to do something different. So we did it their way. And we were doing activism on top of it. And we're supporting third parties. And speaking of third parties, the same people, they'll tell you, yes, we can do all of them. Do you see them bringing third party candidates on their show? You know who is? Me and my comrades over at RBN. Hardlands Media. The only large network that I see doing this stuff, as much as people like to complain and point fingers about him, is Jimmy Dore. Matthew Ho was just on Jimmy Dore's show talking about what they did to him in North Carolina, and he's running third party. So this is something that I've noticed is a constant theme. They tell you these things. People like Katie Halper, I think she means well, but she'll tell you these things. Yes, we can do all of them, but bro, you're not doing all of them. Let's go back in.
Candidates, so candidates endorsed by the Democratic Socialists of America, ranging from AOC to Kristen Gonzalez, who's running now in Queens, and Jabari Brisport, Julia Salazar. And these people undoubtedly make concrete differences in people's material conditions. So while I understand people's frustration with not only the Democrats, but with the squad, I still think that what we have to be doing is building a social movement that makes it impossible for the squad not to do the right thing. Because
too late. I understand people's frustrations, but there's always that but. It's too late. We should be building a social movement to make the squad accountable. No, that should have happened before they got elected. You see, Shama Sawant does this so well. She explained this very well when she came on. That social movement should have started before they were elected, and they should not have been politicians first. See, we did it backwards. You can't come back now and say, hey, we need to build a social movement to hold them accountable. Bro, they already in, they're good. What should have been done when I look back at it, we should have done what Socialist Alternative does. They have the social movement. They're helping people on the ground. So they are out there leading the fight. They already accomplished, but they led the fight to 15 in Seattle. They accomplished that. That was a part of Socialist Alternative. That was not a part of a campaign. That's what we should have been doing. And then the politicians come from the movement. They come from the organizing on the ground, and they don't pick themselves. They don't pick people who want to be career politicians. That's the difference between an organization like that and the Justice Democrats. The organization gets together and they decide who will be the best person to do it. That's how we should have done it. But hell, creating a social movement now to put some kind of pressure on them, they are gone. They so far gone. They won't even come on independent media anymore. Let's be real. Come on, get real. It's too late.
Because no one's going to do the right thing on their own. Like, it's probably apocryphal, but it's still very useful. That FDR quote where he told A. Philip Randolph, these sound great. All these things you're saying about civil rights, the civil rights movement, that sound great. Now go ahead and make me do it. And so the left does.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Brent Hudgens, like, I'm trying not to laugh myself because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about it and I'm like, it's just funny. Like, what are we going to do now? They're already gone. Some of them coming up on 5 years, so they're about to be eligible for their pension. Come on, man. So she mentions the civil rights movement, and I want to say something about this.
Undoubtedly make concrete differences in people's material conditions. So while I understand people's frustration with not only the Democrats, but with the squad, I still think that what we have to be doing is building a social movement that makes it impossible for the squad not to do the right thing. Because no one's going to do the right thing on their own. Like, it's probably apocryphal, but it's still very useful. That FDR quote where he told A. Philip Randolph, these sound great. All these things you're saying about civil rights, the civil rights movement, that sound great. Now go ahead and make me do it. And so the left does, to some extent, I mean, not to some extent, to a large extent, we have to go out and make these politicians do the right thing. We have to force their hand. They need us to force their hand because they can't even if they like certain things, they have to show that there's popular will demanding it.
We've been forcing their hand. We've been forcing their hand. We forced their hand with the Marches for Medicare for All. And it was larger podcasters who criticized us for doing that. Didn't we try to force their hand, force the vote? We've been trying to force their hand. They are gone. Now, she mentioned the civil rights movement, and I want to mention something about that. What people often leave out when you look at like the civil rights movement, that was just the beginning. There was more planned. A lot of times in the education system, they only teach you the bare necessities about the civil rights movement. Now, I have to know more about it. Sorry, I can't talk tonight. I happen to know more about it because of my grandparents. So my grandparents educated me about the civil rights movement. So the areas that the school system left out, my grandparents filled in. What they accomplished with the civil rights movement, desegregation, fighting for equality between white people and black people, that was just the beginning. One of the other things that Martin Luther King wanted to do, he wanted to fight for universal basic income. That was next on his agenda. See, once he accomplished, once they accomplished the social issues, the social fight, next was the economic fight. And I really believe that's why he was killed. One of the issues, universal basic income. Andrew Yang brought this to the surface again when he ran for president in 2020. MLK wanted to do that. MLK wanted to give African Americans reparations for slavery. MLK wanted to organize the workers. You see, MLK was anti-capitalist. MLK, when you look at the civil rights movement, they weren't trying to do reform. They wanted to change the whole system. And they didn't do it through electoral politics. And I honestly believe if they tried to do it through electoral politics, they wouldn't have won. And I think MLK knew that. And I think Malcolm X knew that. And I think all of those civil rights activists that were out there with them, marching with them, sit-ins, getting beaten, having dogs sicked on them, being jailed, I think they all knew that trying to do that path through electoralism was not going to work. That's what we need to happen. If you do want to vote third party, vote independent. But why would you sit here after everything you just heard her say? Why would you sit here and still vote in this corrupt duopoly where even the progressives you put in are going into the same corruption and they just going to sell you out? Why would you continue to do it? What's great about that? So the civil rights movement is something that we should be looking at and we should be taking notes on, because all the pressure came from the outside. Then the politicians made those changes. Now, some people say, why don't we do that now for the squad? Because we've been doing that and they just ignore it. They're gone. AOC is a career politician. She ain't coming back, boo. She is not coming back. And that was her goal all along, by the way. We have to change what we have been doing. And I refuse to play this game anymore. Let's go back in.
You know, I was struck in response to my own question that on June 12th, Sunday, June 12th, there was an election in France which surprised an awful lot of people because several political parties on the far left got together, unified, and ran a political campaign and basically got the same votes as the sitting president, Mr. Macron. He's in a very, very bad and weakening position by the hour, but it is not because of the right. It's because of the left that this situation is coming to a head. And I think it portends all kinds of things that are going to happen in this country too. All right, in the little bit of time we have left, how do you account for the growth of the right wing? Why are right-wing politicians, policies, why are we watching this spectacle of the January 6th committee? What happened to make the right wing as strong as it appears to be?
Wait till you hear this, guys. I already know the answer to this, but listen to this.
Well, they say that Republicans fear their base and Democrats disdain their base, and I think that's true. So I think that...
But Democrats disdain their base because people like you keep telling us to still vote for them. I'll say it again. Democrats disdain their base because people like Katie Halper, even though she's left independent media, she still keep telling you to vote for Democrats. That's why.
That's a big part of it. I think that also something we can't lose sight of is how funded the right wing is. So, you know, the Tea Party was funded by ALEC. These are basically AstroTurf movements. They pretend to be organic grassroots movements, which doesn't mean that there aren't regular people who just join them, but they're very funded and coordinated by extremely wealthy institutions, the Koch brothers, for instance. There's also a lot of discipline on the right wing, I think. And there really isn't any equivalent of the Tea Party on the left. The left equivalent of a Tea Party would be an actually like unapologetically fearless populist movement, and actually populist as opposed to the right-wing populism, which is not populism, it's pseudo-populism. But they are well-funded, they're a well-oiled machine. They have a lot of message discipline, and they fear their base. I think those are some of the reasons why. And they're unapologetic. I think that's probably the biggest thing. People get a sense when people are kind of hedging and when they're being hypocritical. And the Republicans are hypocrites, but they're open hypocrites. Democrats pretend not to be hypocrites, and that's in some ways more hypocritical than the other one.
Good point. All right, I wish we had...
Okie doke. So one thing I do want to say here about why the right seems to be just building and building. Number one, they're organized. And when I say organized, they're organized. They know how to get thousands and hundreds and thousands of people to come together to protest against something. I'll give them that. They know how to get people together. They have the money to get people together. When it's time for them to make sure that their voices are heard, they're organized. They're also organized locally. So that's one of the things I think that would need to change. And number two, Delthea pointed it out. I think I lost it. But Delthea pointed it out. She was mentioning that Republicans know that their base will draw blood if they don't deliver. It's true. It's true. Yeah, their base tends to be more vocal, and they don't feel bad about being vocal. There it is. Republicans know their base will draw blood if lied or ignored too. That's true. No, they know they're vocal. They're not ashamed of being vocal. Democrats, like, you know, the liberals, I always talk about this. The liberals, they kill me. They act like if they say something negative about Democrats in power, that they should be ashamed or they shouldn't say it out loud. Well, I better keep quiet because I don't want them to lose again. You know, it's just this, they cower to that type of fear. And it's just really, it's sad, actually, in a way. It's pretty pathetic. But there was one thing that she mentioned about the hypocrites and things like that. I don't even know if it's necessarily each party trying to be hypocritical. I think both parties know exactly what they're doing. I think they're there to please their donors and they're there to please Wall Street. I don't think they're trying to, or they're being hypocritical per se. I think they know exactly what they're doing. I'll be honest about that. But I'm sorry. in reference to reform, what I was telling you guys before. This is why the reform doesn't work. You can't tweak the system. We tried that in education. We tried it multiple times to tweak the system. It doesn't work. We said, let's add this, let's add that. The kids are still underperforming. We've tried all these different tweaks. Schools are a business. You have to change the whole thing. You have to override the system. When it comes to politics, when it comes to the Democratic Party, reforming the Democratic Party, it don't work. You know why? Because the party's controlled by Wall Street. If you want to override the system, there's two different things that you can do. Number one, you get corporate money out of politics. Obviously, that is not going to be easy. But that's where your focus should be. Because as long as they're both controlled by corporate money, they're not going to do the bidding for your interest. And number two, you got to stop voting in this duopoly. You got to stop voting for corrupt Democrats, corrupt Republicans. You have to start voting third party and independent. And people hear me, they say that like, oh, but that's so hard. That's so difficult. Not really. When you go to vote, you have an option. The problem is you have to change your way of thinking. You have to stop telling yourself, I have to check off this person's name on the box. No, you don't. You really don't. Surprise. Reforming it doesn't work. Reforming it doesn't work because it doesn't override the system. That's why. Policing, same thing. Reforming it, is that working out? No, you have to override the system. Any of my friends that's worked in IT, they're familiar with that. They know about overriding shit. If they try to do tweaks here and there and they realize it's not working out, whoa, we need to just come in and override the whole system. That's what has to happen. And we need to push more mutual aid and direct action. I'm sorry for people to say, oh, we don't have the money. We don't have the money to do it because people are donating their money to politicians. If you take back the money that you donated to Bernie Sanders, that you donated to the Squad, that you donated to Nancy Pelosi, all of these politicians, and you put that money into mutual aid organizations, we could have helped ourselves instead of sitting up here relying on the United States government to come in and rescue. But no, give me your money. This is all they say. Give me your money. Every time. So no shade on Katie Halper, but I'm sorry. She's part of the very same problem that she's complaining about. Because it's people like her, you in independent media, you supposed to be on the left. You still telling people to do the same thing, to donate to this corrupt party. So no. I'll take those comments on Rockfin, Eric, and then I'll do the super chats. I always feel like somebody's watching me. All right. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Last time I checked, Ohio is an open carry state, so they violated his Second Amendment rights. NRA, get out of there, defend his rights. Also, Ohio is a ballot initiative state, allowing voters to pass state law using ballot initiatives via indirect, meaning they give state legislator a chance to pass or have to go on the ballot if not. And direct means to amend Ohio Constitution, going around Ohio government. Ohioans, you know what to do. Propose ballot initiatives to end qualified immunity. Thank you for saying that, Roger. If anyone's listening and they're from Ohio, please take note of that. And thank you for this tip as well. I never told you I met former Massachusetts Congressman Barney Frank at a hotel restaurant outside LaGuardia Airport back in 2017. I didn't have a chance to go in on why he was a sellout. Anyway, on another show today, New York State Senator, who is the sponsor of the New York Health Act, was on, and I asked him if he'd sponsor a ballot initiative amendment allowing us to pass laws and amendments. He was against time. Oh, he was against time to build worker co-ops to be a major lobby force. Interesting. And thank you for this tip as well. Later, for the $40 billion to Ukraine, how about the $5 trillion in the CARES Act that they all voted for? That is more money that didn't go to us. When the elders in the 1980s were fighting for a MLK holiday, staunch opponents like NC Senator Jesse Helms, Arizona Senator McCain fought against it because they recognized his socialist and Marxist ties. Today, GOP don't even recognize that about him. They talk turn the other cheek. Wow. Well said. Thank you for that, Roger Meadows. Thank you for the super chat, AJF. When mentioning property damage, that's the media/state wanting to psychologically nudge the public to accept the state's version of a situation. Thank you for the super chat, Terry Hinton. Sabby, it's a depopulation agenda. I could see that as well. Justin said, it isn't debatable. It's been about the money. The only substantive difference between Republicans and Democrats is that Republicans took the corporate money first and not by much. Yes. Thank you for that, Justin. Well said. Yeah, I was surprised she said that. I was like, dude, this is not debatable. Roman, Sabby's tweet was on Jimmy Dore. Which one? Oh God, which one? What did I say? Tell me, Roman. I tweet a lot, so I don't know. Thank you for this. Justin also said, in Sabby, you are very correct about FDR and the New Deal. Its benefits were not felt by Black people, that's for sure. The New Deal didn't take the country out of the Depression. It was the war. Delthea Simmons says, I hate the phrase women and people of color. Like, you have to be one or the other. You can't be both. That's a good point. JB said, but every time we force their hand, you get people who say you're not doing it right. Yep. JB knows. We know what's up. Thanks for the super chat, AJF. I recall there was a strong socialist, communist, union-based movement that pushed FDR to do the right things. Democratic Party aren't really leftists, but led by liberal Republicans. Ooh. Good point, AJF. Sean says, I have around 6K. I hope to help at least 20 families for the month. But as I run that, I am also going to have RBN on a TV for people to watch. Wow, Sean. Sean's making big plans. All right, Sean. Thank you so much for helping out the people. Thank you for the super chat, AJF. If you're non-white, poor white, non-rich, working class, you need to see Black people and Native Americans as the canary in the coal mine. What happens to them will happen to you. I hope you all know this analogy. Thank you for that, AJF. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. One more on the Rockfin before you go. So Roger he just sent me a super chat on YouTube to tell me there's something on Rockfin. I'll go ahead and take that, Eric. I'm sorry, that's funny. Thanks for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. The best way to overriding the system is abolish all corporations by supporting working co-ops to box them out, to replace them. Abolish all political parties. I could get down with that, Roger. You're the one that had me thinking about that now. Like, do you really need political parties? I don't think we do. I don't think we really do. Thanks for the super chat, Aussie Oracle. Sabby is taking over. Oh, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate Mr. Man. I appreciate you. All right, guys. Wednesday, you guys know I'm not here on Wednesday nights. I switched to Thursday, so I'll be back then. I'll upload clips tomorrow. Don't forget to sign up for my newsletter, guys. That's the best way to get those notification alerts from me about I'm going live. It usually comes out 5 minutes before I go live. That way you guys aren't like relying on YouTube to notify you, because I don't get notifications most of the time. I'm just letting you know. And then also, thanks, Eric. Thanks for the reminder. My next call-in will be Thursday afternoon. I'm going to do those on Thursdays and Fridays. I actually have a schedule for that now. So it'll be Thursday afternoon and of course, Friday evening after my Friday show. So look forward to that. I'm also putting those in my newsletter as well to give you a notification about those as well. But yeah, I am not, Ashura, Sabby Sabs, you calling out AOC's recent comment along with Nick critiquing AOC. Oh, I know which one it was. Oh man. Oh boy. But yeah, so stay tuned for that. And then I am back writing articles again. So my next article will come out by the end of this week. I'm almost done with it. Again, it's called How Liberals Perpetuate Racism. So I'm going to push that puppy out there. That one will be free. So that's how I'm going to do my Substack articles. There'll be a free one and then there'll be one that's like $5 a month kind of thing. But there'll always be a free option every month. So I want everyone to see that one. So I definitely want that one to be free because I think that message needs to be heard. Please hit that like button, you guys, before you go. Helps me out with the algorithm. And that's pretty much what I have coming up, you guys. I do have a couple people that are going to be coming on soon, starting with next week. Oh, wait, that's somebody else. Oh, that's the wrong week. Tomorrow, I will be on Sputnik Radio tomorrow morning. So look forward to that, 9:15 a.m. And then I thought there was something I was supposed to. Oh, wow. Someone's coming on. I forget. I have to double check. I think it's on my Google Calendar and not that calendar. But did you also get your nails done? Reclaim your story. No. I know what you're talking about. She's probably Frank and Kitten. She or he is probably making fun of AOC. I haven't had my nails done in a long time, like a long, long time. It's not really something I do unless it's like a special occasion. Honestly, it costs too much. What time is the Thursday one? The Thursday call-in should be at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Friday is at 9:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm sorry. Some of the comments are cracking me up. I don't know, Eros. I don't know. That was her way of fighting back by getting her nails done. It just, it's kind of like, read the room, bro. Read the room. Like, that's not how you fight back. It's just like, exactly, Eric. AOC is very into AOC. All right. Okay, guys. I am heading out. Have a good evening. I'll upload clips tomorrow. I'll be back Thursday night doing the damn thing. Catch me on Sputnik Radio tomorrow morning at 9:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Other than that, guys, have a good night. Keep up the fight.